Hey guys, my name is Haley and today I'm going to be filming my June wrap-up. And quick disclaimer, some of these I did read in the very end of May, but I'm just kind of picking up where I left off with my last wrap-up. So not completely June, but it's fine. Everything's fine. I think I read around 10 books in June plus the stragglers from May that I have yet to talk about on the channel. We're just gonna get right on into those. I'm gonna do the same thing that I did in my last wrap-up and do like the 4-ish stars and then do the 5-star favorites and then list a couple that I just don't have much to say, which generally means they were under 3 stars. The first book I'm going to talk about is The Memory Police, which I really enjoyed. It's this similar concept to The Book of M by Pink Shepherd, in that people are forgetting their memories and like forgetting specific things, and in this town or whatever it is, memory police like erase something from the town. So like people will forget that bikes exist or something like that, and then come in and like get rid of any evidence that that thing existed. And this has been going on for like forever, and people are slowly just like forgetting so many things. I don't know how it works in the aspect of like people's brains, because it does happen with some people, they just flat out forget everything. And then there are some people, kind of like in The Giver, I keep comparing this book to other books, like in The Giver there's like some people who live in society who don't forget the things, and the memory police is basically after them, and they like try to keep an eye on everyone. And this story was told in like almost 2 perspectives. Well, it was one perspective, but there was also another side timeline of the book that our main character is writing, which I found fascinating. I loved that other time, well, I guess it's a fictional timeline that she was writing, and she starts to realize she might be someone who's starting to remember things. So this was really fun. I loved the fictional story she was writing timeline, actually a little bit more than the other timeline, and I really enjoyed this. I gave this 4.5 stars. And then I read The Good Song by a Korean author whose name is escaping me. Is it Jung Jung Yeon? It'll be on your screen. This is a Asian thriller that is from the perspective of a very unreliable narrator, I think is the best way to put it. Asian thrillers tend to be from the perspective of you kind of already know what happened. Like an American thriller is mostly people like trying to figure out what happened throughout the story. But at the beginning of Asian thrillers that I've read, it seems like you already kind of know what happened, and you're like reading it from a very different perspective as everybody else figures out what happened. And that was definitely the case with this one. I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. I will definitely read other things by this author because the perspective that he wrote from was fascinating, and I'm just not going to say what it was because it's a little bit spoilery. Then I read a random thriller, and I think I picked this up because this author, T. Kingfisher, has another book coming out in the fall, I believe, that I thought sounded really fascinating. So I was like, oh, I'll pick up one of her books if my library has any of them, and that is The Twisted Ones. And this was probably the most entertaining in like, I actually laughed out loud several times at our main character's like sassy, witty comments. Like thriller slash horror. It was more horror than thriller, I would say, that I have ever read. It was so funny. I loved our main character, and I'm really hoping this is like not a one-time thing with this author and that all of her main characters are going to be a little bit sassy. Like it feels like a real person reacting to being put into a horror movie or a horror novel. And like the completely sassy, oh, of course this happened. Of course there are animal bones haunting me. Is a little bit of a spoiler, but there are scenes from this that were actually really creepy, which doesn't always happen with horrors for me, so I really enjoyed this. I gave this 4 stars, and I'm really excited to pick up her new book when it comes out in the fall. I can't even remember what the name of it is off the top of my head, but I really like this author just from that one book because it was very entertaining. And then I read a story out of Junji Ito's manga collections, or is it manga? Yeah, it's manga. Out of his like short story collections, which I'm going to be reading more of those at Kate's house when I go to New Hampshire. But I found the entirety of it online, called The Enigma at Amigara Fault, which is a book I've heard Kate talk about for like several years, and she compared it to like another book that we read, which I don't remember which book she compared it to, but this is about a town where all of a sudden there's just like crevices in the side of a mountain that are human shaped, and like people start to feel called to the mountain to find their crevice that fits them perfectly. And that's all I'm gonna say about it. It's really creepy. Like, I would love to see like an anime or just like a short film about this because it's super creepy. But I really, really loved it. I gave it 4.75 stars. This is a book that I picked up on recommendation from Sam from Thoughts on Tomes, and just the premise like caught my attention immediately, and I immediately bought it on Amazon. And that is Heart and Soul by Erin Kinsella. And this is a contemporary romance, and she described it as a girl is, her book that she wrote is being made into a K-drama. So she's flying out to Korea to stay with a friend of hers to overlook the filming of this K-drama, and she gets there and the lead actor is her K-pop bias from her favorite group. So I was like, that sounds very relatable. I would love to read that. I'm a little bit wary of K-pop novels. I feel like there aren't that many. I have read one. I read one last year called Comeback, which I thought was fun. But this one was, it's definitely more adult. If you don't like sex scenes, don't read this. There's like 2 or 3 in here that I was like skimming over because I'm not a big fan of that in my books. But this is, I loved the dynamic of, because she meets the entire group of this boy that she ends up meeting and having a like fake dating relationship with, and she meets his entire group, his K-pop group that are really famous. They're called Upbeat. And I thought the dynamic between all of our characters was really fun. Like, it was just really refreshing to read. I've seen other people complain about this showing like just the really good sides of K-pop, which it kind of does, and I think that's just people who don't believe that K-pop idols are all friends in the group, which is true. Not every single group is going to be friends with everyone in their group. There are many examples of that in the K-pop industry today, but there are some groups that I feel like probably are actually friends in real life, and I felt like that was the case with this one. I thought the romance was really cute. It was a fake dating thing, which is not necessarily my favorite trope, but I thought it was really cute. I gave this 4.5 stars. It's really more of a 4-star, but I had so much fun following the K-pop group that I was like, it's fine. At the very end of May, and this is why I keep saying this is more of like the end of May into June wrap up, because I read this quite a while ago. Me and Kate buddy read New Moon in preparation for Midnight Sun coming out in August, and I'm dumb, and in my summer reading plans video I forgot to even mention that we were rereading this series. We did not reread Twilight this go around because we reread Twilight like a little over a year ago, and like I've read Twilight so many times I don't need a refresher on that story. But New Moon is probably one of the ones I've read the least, and we annotated them to death. Like, there's all kinds of stuff going on in here. But this was really fun. I actually looked a lot at the depression representation in this with Bella after Edward leaves. If you haven't read Twilight, sorry, I guess that's a spoiler, but if you haven't read Twilight right now, you probably aren't going to. But I actually found Bella a lot more fascinating in this one, especially with the Cullens being gone like the entire time. And all of my annotations for Twilight were about the Cullens, but I had a lot for Bella. Bella is the pink tabs, and then green is Jacob. And I was like, this time around, I was like, I wonder if I'm gonna like hate Jacob less than like 14-year-old me did. And that's not the case necessarily. Like, I don't find him as annoying. He does get really, really possessive of Bella towards the end of this and just angry teenage boy, which I did not enjoy, but this was actually much more, I think like Teenage Haley gave this probably a 2-star. I gave it a 4-star. I think it's a solid book. It's definitely still my least favorite in the series, but you know, Twilight. But we are planning on annotating Eclipse and Breaking Dawn very soon, probably after all of the travel that we're doing with Kate coming out here and me going out there. We'll just binge the last 2 books before Midnight Sun comes out on August 4th. And probably one of my favorite books of the year, and I'm very confused by everybody saying how much they hated this book, and that is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. This is the Hunger Games prequel, and I loved it. I would have read it so much faster than I did had I not been like super busy the days that I was listening to this audiobook. But there are so many people going around complaining about this book, being like, why did we need this? This wasn't helpful. The romance is cringy. And I'm like, this book is about President Snow. did you really expect him to be a likable character? Like, they thought, I know a lot of people going into this were like concerned that Suzanne Collins was gonna make Snow likable, and I don't think she even tried. Like, she just accepts that he's a terrible person and a coward and just like runs with it and shows what happened to him during the, I think it's the 10th annual Hunger Games during this time. And it was really fascinating to see what the Hunger Games used to look like before they turned it into what we know now from the original trilogy. There is a romance in here. It's not, you're not supposed to root for the romance. It's like, it's so obvious being in Snow's head that he's a terrible person, and I don't know why people are going into it like expecting to like him as a main character. Like, he's supposed to be an unlikable character. But people are having so many issues with this book, and I don't understand it because I thought it was really fun and fascinating. Also, there's a part of this in the ending that relates a lot to the original Hunger Games trilogy, and I like had to pause the audiobook in shock when we got to that part. Just saying, can't spoil that, but I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. It's gonna be on my favorite books of the year. I loved it. Next up is a book that I finished like a couple of days ago, and it's definitely gonna be on my favorites of the year, and that is What Lies Between Us by John Marrs. John Marrs has taken my like thriller reading taste to a whole new level because he has so many good plot twists and so many unlikable characters that I am just blown away by his writing style. I've read The One and The Passengers by him early this year, and then I read this and another one I'm about to talk about. This has been my favorite of the 4. I flew through this. I have a clip of me reading the ending of it in my reading vlog, which I'll leave linked down below, and my mind was blown. I adore John Marrs. I don't even want to give you a description for this because I went in knowing very little. I'll just say this is a story about a mother and a daughter, and it's incredibly messed up. Like, there were plot twists in this like every 50 pages. At one point in the book, it's like every 5 pages, and I was just having my mind blown like every 3 seconds. So if you have not read this, if you've never picked up John Marrs, pick this up. Pick up one of his books. Like, look at all of his descriptions and pick the one that sounds the most interesting to you and just run with it, because I adore him and he has very much become my favorite thriller author. And then the other John Marrs book that I just finished literally yesterday is When You Disappeared, and I read this on Kindle Unlimited. If you have Kindle Unlimited, please go check it out. It's for free on there. And this is yet another thriller, and it's super unlikable characters, and the ending of this absolutely broke my heart. Like, I was very upset. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars because the middle was a little slow and a little bit repetitive. It is the story of a husband and a wife, and one day the wife wakes up and the husband has just disappeared. He disappeared from their lives, and it's the repercussions of what happens to their 3 children and how they react to it, how his wife reacts to it, and it also follows his timeline. And it was fascinating. The ending absolutely destroyed me when you figure out what's going on and what actually happened in the past and how unreliable your narrators are. And the husband in this was like the worst human being I've ever read from in my entire life, and I hated him so much, but it was like watching a car crash. I could not look away at how terrible of a person he was, especially being in his perspective. So I gave this 4.5 stars and definitely recommend. It might be my second favorite of the John Marrs books that I've read. I really liked it, and I have 2 more of his books on my Kindle. And then last, I have a couple of books that I didn't really enjoy that much, or that I really don't have that much to say about, and I'll just list those off. The first being The Deep by Rivers Solomon, and this book I picked up after hearing Creepy Mermaids on someone's channel. I thought it was fine. The best part about this was I started the audiobook and recognized the narrator's voice and went, wait a minute, that's Daveed Diggs. If you don't know, Daveed Diggs is one of the original cast members of Hamilton. And I was like, what are you doing on an audiobook? What? And like went down an entire hole of like figuring out how he got involved in this audiobook. Yes, he plays Lafayette in Hamilton. So if you like Daveed Diggs, you might want to listen to this audiobook because I had a great time, and he definitely was the best part about this. I gave it like a 3.5 stars. And I read Fun Home by Alison Bechdel. This is a graphic memoir that I have got at a thrift store and have heard about for years because they turned it into a musical. I think I would like the musical a lot more than I liked this graphic memoir because this is not my favorite medium to read. or even to read a memoir about, so I am actually giving this to Kate because she has always wanted to read it, but I gave this 3.5 stars as well. I also read The Shining Girls by Lauren Bukes, and this was something I picked up because I heard the word time traveling serial killer, and that was literally why I got it at Half Price Books. And this was just okay. The middle was really boring, I'm not gonna lie. There was a certain period of time where I was about to DNF it, but the ending definitely made up for it, so I gave it a 3.5 stars. I don't even know if I would recommend this, but it was fine. And then last, I read Our Wayward Fate by an author whose name is escaping me because this book was very forgettable, I guess is the right word. It's a contemporary about a Taiwanese girl growing up in high school, and she's like erased her identity basically as being Taiwanese and just is trying to fit into the crowd. And then she meets a boy who is also from China and from Asia, and she gets to know him, and it's super insta-lovey. And also the beginning of this book made me so angry because it was just a bunch of racist teenagers making comments at them, and I was like, this is annoying and uncomfortable, and I don't think it was addressed that well. But yeah, I gave it I don't even think I gave it 3 stars. I think I gave it like a 2.5 stars. But yeah, those are all of the books that I read in June. Tell me what your favorite book that you read this month was down below in the comments, and thank you all for watching, and I will see all of you guys next time.